he tried, the more dandelions came. So he would, contact people, how should I get rid of these dandelions? And everybody would tell him, well, try this, try this, try this. And he tried everything, and he had dandelions all the time. So finally, he didn't know what else to do, so he wrote the Department of Agriculture. And he told them, went through everything that he tried. He said, now, what else should I do? So they wrote him a letter back. And they said, we suggest you should learn to love them. I think that's perfect. That's a perfect message. And how many times, this message today was inspired, I have to say, was inspired by someone in our own congregation who demonstrates to me non-resistance in a way that's incredible over a situation that even got me upset. And I wasn't really right into it, but just listening to it, it got me upset. When I saw this person demonstrate non-resistance in an incredible way, and it really inspired me. It inspired me to be a better person and to actually look at what's inside me. Because when this happened, and she told me about this, I got angry, and what that shows me is that there's anger inside of me, and I'm pushing against this situation. And whenever there's a situation that happens, and we show emotion over it, it always shows us what's inside, what can come back. So the message today is going to be on, of course, non-resistance. And when we talk about non-resistance, what do people think? What's the first thing we think about when we think about non-resistance? Being non-resistant. What's that? Something you can't see? What do you mean by that? It's hard to. A doormat, right? When we think about non-resistance, we feel like we'd be laying down and be a doormat. Exactly. Maria?
Not fighting back.
No fighting back?
Yes. But you have some problem to try to solve, and doesn't go your way, the way you're solving, it's because you put resistance. As you not put resistance, you rather just go and trust. Maybe solve.
And how hard is that to do?
It is a lot. Yes.
And like Art said, I think one of the main things is a lot of us feel that non-resistance is being a doormat. If we don't resist what we see as wrong or something like that, we're condoning that action. We're laying down, being a doormat, letting something walk all over us. However, I hope after this message today, everybody's going to be thinking differently about non-resistance. There was an Egyptian pharaoh, in the time of the Egyptian pharaoh, the prisoner wars that they had, at the end of the battle or whatever, they would kill all the prisoner of wars. That was their tradition, basically. And there was one pharaoh that ended up leaving them God. And he caught a lot of resistance, and a lot of people really were on him about letting the prisoner of wars go. And he said, don't I destroy my enemies by loving them?
What?
Oh, wow, what a concept.
I said pumpkin.
By loving his enemies, or basically letting them go, he has no enemies.
I don't have one.
I remember early on my spiritual journey, someone told me, you don't have to attend every argument that you're invited to.
Hey, Aaron.
Oh, wow. That's an interesting piece of information or a piece of advice. Because usually when somebody starts something and invites us to come in, we're right there to join in. Eric Butterworth talks a lot about non-resistance, and he said, remember that an argument, it takes two people for an argument, but it only takes one person to stop that argument. And to stop, to pull out. So really, when we resist, when we do resist, when we jump in and do that, end that argument or whatever, what happens to us?
We remove ourselves.
We remove ourselves, what do you mean?
So if somebody wants to, like say, you said it takes two people to argue.
Right.
So what I'm saying is how to resist that is to just remove yourself and not argue.
Okay. If something, what I'm asking is, when something goes wrong in our life, and we resist it, why do we because our opinion is different from somebody else's opinion, basically. We feel that somebody has done something to us. So we're really, we're looking at that, we're making a judgment about that. We don't like it, so we get in there to give them a piece of our mind, or whatever. And we usually end up giving a piece of our mind, but we give the piece, the piece out of our mind. We take the piece out of our mind. But, okay, so what happens to us, though, as we resist and as we fight? What happens to us physically?
We just get so angry, so mad, we don't accomplish anything.
Okay, we close out, basically, exactly. When we get angry and we fight and we resist, or it's like a fight or flight thing, fight or flight. Fight or flight was made for the people in the jungle when they had to get away from animals, and you had to fight or flight, to run, or or fight the animals. Now, we still get all those hormones, all those emotions going in our body, but we don't do anything with them, and they make us sick. And what we're doing by constantly fighting against something and pushing against something is we're making ourselves sick. What happens when we decide to let go and relax and not do anything?
We get more in the flow.
We get
peaceful, the stress is gone.
Exactly. Exactly. By resisting anything, by fighting against anything, it hurts us more than it hurts them. And we think sometimes by letting go, we're actually, doing a duty for them, or we're doing that for them. Really, we're doing it for us. We think we can't let go, or we can't not resist because of them. That would let them off the hook. We don't do it for them, we do it for us. We practice non-resistance for ourselves. There's the word enmity is a feeling or condition of hostility, hatred, ill will, animosity. And to have that inside of us certainly keeps us from the flow of life, from the flow, the divine flow of anything happening. In the Bible it says, our enemies are the ones in our household. Our biggest enemies are the ones in our household, in our own household. What does that mean?
Us.
When they talk about household, it's up here. Our household is in our own head.
Yeah.
Our biggest enemies are in our own head. It's our thoughts about something. Now think about the guy with the dandelions. He didn't like the dandelions, wanted to get rid of the dandelions. Did everything that he could, pushed against it. Every day he looked at those dandelions, he got angry about them, and he would tell people about them and work himself up about these dandelions. What would happen when he finally says, you know what? They add color to the yard, right? They bring bees to the yard, they do whatever. And they start loving them. What happens to him? He's all of a sudden in the flow. He changes his thoughts. He gets rid of his enemies, which his enemies are in his head, his thoughts about what he thinks about them.
I think I've had a very visual. I'm thinking about when we resist, we're like a rock that's put in the way of the flow of life. And it's really, the resistance is, we're resisting the flow going. What we may be doing is working on, not see what is really in divine order. So.
Exactly. And that's a great analogy. It's like a rock. It's a rock, and we're not moving, and so we're not moving, so actually we're not flowing with life. And as long as we're there fighting, it persists. What you resist persists. Have you ever heard of that statement? We say that in Unity a lot. What we resist persists. Meaning as long as we're going to stay there and fight against it, it's going to be there fighting against us. And it's going to get bigger, just like the guy with his dandelions. His whole yard was getting full of dandelions. Because the more he put his attention to it, the more energy he gave back. And that's the thing with life. The more we put our attention to something, the more we give it energy and the bigger it gets. There's a story about a French philosopher, Montaigne, who lived in the 17th century. And that was the time of the religious wars. And he was one of the first peace activists. So he would not take sides, but he would allow both sides to come into his chateau and take a rest and, when they were weary and stuff, and he wouldn't take any sides. And it was amazing because all the chateaus, all the big houses and the big mansions, all around him were destroyed by war, except his mansion. Because he refused to resist. You know, he was non-resistant, he didn't take sides, but allowed everyone to come. And in that way, his place stayed intact. And it's not just about that, but it's about, you know, our lives staying intact. You know, we think that the way that we're going to win is to push against and really show our might. However, the way we win is really by being non-resistant and stepping back. Besides that, it throws everybody really off when you say, I'm not going to attend this argument, right? Maybe if you say, you know, maybe you have a point, let me think about it, let me come back to you, you know, and just not really get into that. But how many things in life, and especially now with all the election stuff and all this stuff going on, and you know, all the emails that are going around about this person does this and this person does that, and you know, all the resistance, all the pushing against, instead of just letting be. You know, how much that muddies everything up. I like Eric Butterworth has a great line as far as non-resistance. He says, the only way to get even is to love, to bless, and to forgive. Not because they deserve it, because you deserve it. And think about that. Non-resistance it encompasses all those things. Non-resistance encompasses forgiveness, acceptance. Because all of those things that we fight against are things that we can't forgive, things that we can't accept. I talked 2 weeks ago about oneness, the oneness of everybody. When we only look at our differences instead of looking at how we're the same. When we practice non-resistance, we start seeing the way we're the same instead of seeing the way we're different. When we have that in our mind and actually practice non-resistance, those thoughts of animosity, enmity, that's what I'm looking for. The thoughts of enmity all of a sudden go away and we realize that we have that peace inside. When Wayne Dyer says, when you squeeze an orange, all you get out of there is orange juice. The question is, when we get squeezed, what comes out of us? Eric Butterworth also tells a story. He said suppose you're walking, and he's Eric Butterworth, if you don't know Eric Butterworth, he is a popular Unity minister. And he would lecture at Fisher Hall in New York City. So he said, you know, how about you go out from this lecture and you stand by the curb and a big bus comes and, you know, doesn't pay any attention to you and splashes you with a puddle of mud. And you stand there, I can't believe he did that. Look at how I'm dressed. This is horrible. How could he do that? You know, and he said, and besides that, I was just at a lecture and I had all these thoughts of peace and love in my heart. How could they do that? Right? But at that point, what did we have inside? What did that person have inside? Not peace and love, because that wouldn't have come out of them. It's a matter of, you know, and I love what Eric Butterworth says, when somebody pushes your buttons, that's a great time to stop and say, wow, I had that button to be pushed. You know, and actually thank that person, because they showed you what you had inside and what you need to heal. And that's pretty powerful.
But we don't think about that.
No, we don't. We don't.
No, you just get so angry and then they back.
Exactly. Exactly. And that's the human, that's living out of our humanness instead of living from our divineness. You know, living from the Spirit. And that's what we're here to do. And that's what we're here to do, is to learn, you know, how we're living from our humanness, but how we can change and living from our divinity. You know, because the divinity is there. It's just all that other stuff that's kind of clouding it. And once we realize that and heal that and get rid of it, then we can give those thoughts of peace. You know, do you want to say something else?
You know what? Yes, it's so easy to say than done, but if somebody comes and pushes your button, whatever, and then you just, okay, I'm gonna get you back later, or, you know, sooner or later I get you, you know, somehow. And but if you don't, you just have the love in your heart at the moment. It is like, you know, do I let it, or do I go for it, or if I don't go, I just let this person think, hey, she or him take over me.
But you know what, it's amazing, and that's what we think. We think that, you know, they're winning if we let them go. But just try it. Try this week. I encourage everyone to try this week to be non-resistant. When something comes up in life that you want to push against, that you want to complain about, that you want to be angry about, you want to do something about, how to do something about it, to be non-resistant, to bless it. And that doesn't mean to condone it. People don't understand that, you know, they say, well, how can I love that person? I don't even like that person. Love and like are different things. You know, love is from God. It's acceptance, it's compassion, it's, you know, seeing somebody, the divinity within somebody. It doesn't mean that you have to like that person. It doesn't mean that you have to go to lunch with them or, you know, have their friends. It means that you have to love them with the divinity and not, you know, push against.
When I see people like that or have interactions with people like that or who are so confrontational and, you know, do things deliberately to other people, I think, that makes me happy. This is not a happy person. And, you know, I bless them on their way, that they might find happiness and love in their hearts so that they can, you know, feel the joy instead of getting into that kind of, like the drivers that, you know, they're going to go all over the place real fast and then get mad at people and it's like, okay, bless you on your way.
There's another thing that I remember already is hurt people. And that is so true. A lot of times the people that try to hurt us are trying to hurt us because they're already hurt. And they want to hurt back. You know, they want to get back at us. And as long as we keep doing that, it's going to continue. Go ahead.
You know, Nancy, in listening to this, one thing keeps coming to my mind in regards to resistance. If you witness something that you don't think is right, if you don't go against it, you become an enabler and help that evil thing or what's wrong to grow.
But it's a matter of, in what context are you talking about?
Women's right to vote. Did not the women come up with resistance?
And
You know what I mean?
okay.
If they had kept their mouth shut and just said, well, we'll just wait and see what happens, we might still be waiting to vote.
Do you know a perfect example of that, and I have this written down as far as people that we should look at to really try to be like Martin Luther King. What was Martin Luther King's stand? He went for rights. You know, he was an incredible man, did incredible things. And he says, you know, after people's homes were bombed and you know, people were killed, he says, we will meet your physical force with soul force. Do to us what you will, and we will still love you. And that's what non-resistance is. And that's the power of non-resistance. And look what he did. You know, I mean, look at the power that was in that. And yeah, all of those people. Buddha talked about, and Buddha has this thing, and I didn't write it down, but he says, the more that you will come against us, the more evil that you will give to me, I will give you more good. You know, when Jesus talks about turning the other cheek, it's not, you know, it's not, again, laying down and being a doormat, but it's coming from love and not resistance from hate and not resistance, because that really makes us weaker. We think that when we fight and everything, it makes us stronger. It really makes us weaker. And they do that with kinesiology and everything. It actually makes us weaker to fight against. You know, and it makes us stronger to love, to come from a place of love. And we can do incredible things, you know, against injustices through love, though, through love and not hostility. So it's a matter of how we do that. You know, and I understand what you're saying. I understand what you're saying there, but it's a matter of how we do that. Is that what you're you don't agree with that?
Well, I agree, and I see your point, but at the same time,
Let's not protect
if we witness injustice, we just can't smile and pray for the people that are doing this stuff. We've got to say, we won't stand for this no more. We have a right to vote. we have a right to do this. You know, we have rights and we have to stand by them.
We do,
Now, I'm not saying getting violent and being real confrontational, but even the Martin Luther King, the rallies, there were thousands, did not they indeed show power and brotherhood in the movement?
right.
And that was in itself
And it
a
was-
form of resistance.
And that's, exactly, and even Mother Teresa said, I will not attend a war demonstration, but I will attend a walk for peace. So it's a matter of how you're gonna go against it. It's a matter of how you're gonna make your statement. It's a matter of how you're gonna make your statement. So non-resistance, that's why I say, non-resistance isn't being a doormat, just laying down and saying, okay, do whatever you want. But it's a matter of fighting against and hurting, that kind of thing. It's a matter of pushing against. The more we push against, the more we'll get pushed against. The more we'll keep it in our face. And I do believe, and I know Eric Butterworth says, and probably if Eric Butterworth was standing up here, he would say, how does he say, a lot of times when people challenge him or whatever, he says, don't try to do calculus before you understand addition, 2 plus 2, because a lot of times we bring up that, what about this, what about that, things that we totally don't understand, and totally don't seem like, if we say, yes, there is divine order in this world, and we say, how can that be divine order? It's because we don't understand. We don't have that spiritual sight to understand why things are the way they are. That's because we're trying to do calculus when we're only here learning addition. And that's what's in our life. What can I do? What's in my life? So that's it's a matter of and I do understand what you're saying. I do understand what you're saying because 2 weeks ago I gave a message as far as all of us being one and the mouse and asking for help and then wanting to help them or whatever. But it's a matter of how we go about it. It's a matter of what we put through our hearts. And think about if we go from the matter of love, or a matter of love or a matter of divinity, we're going to have a lot different way of handling things than if we go from hatred and trying to get back at somebody. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it has to do with intention. Is our intention to fight with someone or is our intention to come together and resolve an issue?
Right. Right. And when we talk about injustices and everything else, and I do have to, I'll bring this up, this is getting way off, but that's okay. That's okay. And some people might not agree with me, but an injustice is an injustice because we have judged that as an injustice. We look at something and we say that's an injustice. And we look at what's happening and all we have is a little piece of the puzzle. Because we don't know the whole picture. And I do believe that underneath, we are spiritual beings on a human existence. And in that spiritual realm, or that's as a spiritual being, there are things that are going on underneath that looks like a message. I always say about the tapestry of life. When you turn over an embroidery, it's all knotted and knots and lines going all over, threads going all over the place, and it doesn't look like anything. But when you turn it over, it's a beautiful picture. So we look at the injustice and we say, those are all the knots and everything in there that's not right. But when you turn it over, something good has come out of it. And think about all the injustices of life. Think about like 9/11. Think about what came out of that. If you look for the good in that. People came together. People expressed love in ways that they never did. That allowed people to do that, to let that love flow from them that they never could. All of these things, the things that happen in Colorado, we say that's an injustice. And I do believe that our souls have some kind of there's a soul contract or something that we don't know, but we have agreed to come to help be the part of somebody else's learning. If we look at us as a spiritual journey, on a spiritual journey, to learn a lesson, we don't know the whole big picture. As a matter of we just have to trust. But, all those things we look at as injustices, where it might be something different. We don't know.
Forget about the power of thought. When enough people think the same thought, it moves power behind it.
Right.
So if people live on positive, the results will be positive.
Right. The power of thought is just is just to even, and, you know, and we do forget about that, you know, the power of our thought, and enough people thinking the same thought, that same thought of peace, that will bring peace. And, you know, we think we can't just sit there and do nothing. But, you know, prayer and thought is not doing nothing. That's very, very powerful. It's incredibly powerful, and we forget about how powerful that is. You know, it really, really is. There's a story I want to share this story. This might make you think a little bit. It's called rafting. By good fortune, I was able to raft down the Montu River in New Zealand twice during the last year. The magnificent 4-day journey traverses one of the largest or the last wilderness areas in the North Island. The first expedition was led by Buzz, an American guide who was a great deal of rafting experience and many stories to tell of mighty rivers such as the Colorado. With a leader like Buzz, there was no reason to fear anything of the great rapids of the Montu. The first half day in the gentle upper reaches was spent developing teamwork and coordination. Strokes had to be mastered, and the discipline of following commands without question was essential. In the boiling fury of a rapid, there would be no room for any mistake. When Buzz bellowed above the roar of the water, an instant reaction was essential. We mastered the Montu. In every rapid, we fought against the river, and we overcame it. The scream commands of Buzz were matched only by the fury of our paddles as we took the raft exactly where Buzz wanted to go. At the end of the journey, there was a great feeling of triumph. We had won. We proved that we were superior. We knew that we could do it. We felt powerful and good. The mystery and the majesty of the Montu had been overcome. The second time I went down the Montu, the experience I had gained was so much invaluable, but so different. The guide on this journey was very soft-spoken. His name was Kiwi. It seemed that it would not be even possible to hear his voice above the noise of the rapids. As we approached the first rapid, he never even raised his voice. He did not attempt to take command of us or of the river. Gently and quietly, he felt the moan of the river and watched every little whirlpool. There was no drama and no shouting. There was no contest to be won. He loved the river. We sped through each rapid with grace and beauty, and after a day, the river had become our friend, not our enemy. The quiet Kiwi was not our leader, but only a person whose sensitivity was more developed than our own. Laughter replaced the tension of achievement. Soon the quiet Kiwi was able to lean back and let all of us take a turn as leader. A quiet nod was enough to draw attention to the things our lack of experience prevented us from seeing. If we made a mistake, then we laughed and it was the next person's turn to see. We began to penetrate the mystery of the Montu. Now, like the quiet Kiwi, we listened to the river and looked carefully for all those things that we never noticed the first time. At the end of the journey, we had overcome nothing except ourselves. We did not want to leave behind our friend, the river. There was no contest, and so nothing had to be won. Rather, we had to become one with the river. It remains difficult to believe that the external circumstances of the two journeys were the same. The difference was in an attitude and a frame of mind. At the end of the journey, it seemed that there could be no other way. Given the opportunity to choose a leader, everyone would have chosen someone like Buzz, someone that could take command. At the end of the second journey, we had glimpsed a very different vision, and we felt humble and intensely happy. I think that story is awesome, explaining the two different ways. With Buzz, it was a non-resistance. You know, it was resisting the river. It was fighting against the river. It was getting those rapids and really, showing. And on the other way, it was Kiwi who said, if you love the river, you learn to go with it. You learn to go with the flow. You learn that just, by paddling, by knowing its ways, by becoming one, you learn things about it that's incredible. How many times have you heard stories of people that they started working with somebody that they hated, they couldn't stand, they had different ideas, they had different opinions, and there was no other way but to get used to them then. It was like either quit your job or get used to working with this person. And they ended up to be great friends because they dropped their resistance. They started looking at that person in a different way. They started accepting that. And those things that we talk about, that we say are injustices, when we start looking at those injustices in a different way too, we start looking at people do that because they're afraid. They do that out of fear. They do that out of control. You know, and when we start looking at that and looking and starting and then addressing that issue, it's a lot different than looking at them. You know, a lot of times when we look at those injustices, we look at what's going to happen to us. You know, and we get into fear, and we get into things that we can't control. However, if we start looking at it, you know, from a different way, from a different area of compassion, you know, we start seeing things in a different way. And we learn that we don't have to really fight back. But all we have to do is see that person's fear, that person's control, or that group's control issue, or whatever, and then look at it, go from that aspect. And we can do things in a different way. You know, there's so many different things to think about, you know, when we live life. It's like, you know, when we live in the physical, it's like easy. Somebody does something to us, we fight back, that's it, that's the way it's supposed to be. When we live in the spiritual, we realize that that's not the way it is. You know, that that's not the way it should be. If we turn the other cheek, if we really do, the fight all of a sudden drops. You know, and a lot of times, if you think about it, the reason that things do fight is because somebody says something. You know, like even women's voting rights. I want the right to vote. Men, oh no, you're not going to get the right to vote. Oh yes, we are. That kind of thing. And it goes back and forth. You know, whereas you know actually the fighting keeps it in place and keeps people digging their heels in. Or if it would stand back and take it from a different aspect, seeing that their fear of loss of control or something like that, and then address that issue in a different way, in a peaceful way. All of a sudden, the fight leaves. You know, the fight leaves because we don't have to be resistant. We don't have to be non-resistant. Does that kind of clarify things? Because it is really, it's hard to think about that, and then especially when we think about those big injustices. But it's a matter of looking at it in a different way. Because there is, and I know I was taught when I first went on my spiritual journey, you're going to find anything that you want. In any situation, you'll find whatever you look for. If you look for something good out of it, you'll find something good. If you look for something bad out of it, you're going to find something bad. So it's a matter of looking through the eyes of spirit and seeing things in a different way. And when we do that, we will see a peaceful way of doing it instead of pushing against it. And that's what we're asked to do.
When you started your message, I thought you said non-existent.
Oh, non-existent, okay. Yes, I can see what you say, okay, all right, yes. There's this one good thing, the things that we meet in life do not hurt us. They are powerless to affect us. It is our reaction to them that causes us the pain. Right there, think about that sentence, that says so much. Those things can't hurt us. It's our thoughts about them. So we'll take these thoughts into meditation. And I invite you to get comfortable in your seat. Just take a deep breath in. Just at this point, you're going to learn the energy. Get in the flow of the music. As you go to that place within, I invite you to go along with me and sit by a pond. As you sit down, you look at the water of the pond, and you can clearly see that something has stirred it up. It's all muddy. See the particles floating in it. As you sit there, I invite you to just relax. And just watch the water. Without doing anything. Just watch how the mud stops swirling. watch as the water begins to clear. As you sit there and just watch, without doing anything, see how the pond has come smooth and clear vessel of water. Where you can get up, look down and see the bottom of the pond. Where all the mud, which was once stirred up, is now lying quietly on the bottom. As you realize you did nothing to make this clear, but to sit and observe. I ask you to bring a situation or a person into your mind who is stirring up thoughts of mud. Who you may have been resisting for a long time or even a short time. Something that brings out within you those thoughts of anger, those thoughts of hostility, those thoughts of ill will. And ask to see that situation or that person in a different way. Knowing that hurt people hurt people. Knowing that it's people in fear. Or lack of control. As you see this situation or this person in a different way, try to see the mud of your thoughts go down to the bottom. So that you can get a clearer thought, a clearer view of this situation, or of this person. And as that mud settles, just know that you did nothing. But be still. Be still and know the power of peace. Know the power of the Christ within. Know the power of prayer. Know the power of non-resistance. As you see through that situation, through the clearness of the water, see the Christ within that person. No matter how hard it is to do, you don't need to like them. You don't need to be their friend. You're not condoning anything that they have done. But for you, relax, let go, it's the, in the blue book, the yellow pages.